Hello everybody. So today I'm going to go over what it's like when I'm refurbishing one of these machines from the auction. Some of the things that I check and see, and issues that you might run into with your machines that might be the same as what some of these machines that come to me have. These are like all typical, it's going to be all about typical problems that these machines can run into. Common fixes, how to diagnose something that might be bothering your machine. All things that I would do when a machine comes here. I'm going to go from basically from top to bottom. Now this machine, I can tell you right now, has already got many problems just by eyeballing it. I threw it together out of the box. I didn't do anything to it yet. I just wanted to make sure all the parts are here. And I kind of put it together just for this video. It only takes a minute to assemble these and disassemble them, so anyway. Looking this over from top to bottom, I already see a couple things. One, it's not sitting square on the desk. That tells me that the frame is probably not straight. So we're going to release the bolts and kind of let everything relax and tighten it back up and see if that fixes that. This is definitely not adjusted correctly. This has some play to it. This has some play to it. There's just a lot of things going on at once here. So before we, start really making a list here, we're just going to go ahead and fix this part first. And that's going to require me to basically disassemble this down to the base. So I figured this would be a great video for you guys to watch. It'll show you step by step how I take one of these apart and what I'm looking for when I do it. So the first thing I'm going to do, it's also missing an extruder motor. We're going to add that in when I put it back together. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and plug my wiring. And if you're careful, you just have to try to grab it by the connector, give it a little bit of a wiggle, and it'll come right out. And this side has these three wires. This is your limit switch, your X motor, and your extruder motor. Obviously the extruder wasn't plugged in. I'm also going to go down here. I'm going to unplug my sensor here. This is a little bit bent. I might have to replace this. It's bent, beat up. This is my limit switch for my Z-axis. Okay, so now that's off. I'm going to raise this up, and if it doesn't want to go up by picking it up this way, you can turn this little coupler back here like that and just kind of help it up. Just want to get this up and out of the way, up towards the top. Alright, so bring it up there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this crossbar. Normally there would be a spooler here. In this case, it doesn't come with a spooler. It didn't come with one from the auction. So I can either order that part, or I can include one of my custom-made rollers here. Alright, so I am going to start removing some parts here. Let's start with this top rail. If you're wearing headphones or you have your volume up, you want to be careful, because this tool, it's a little loud. It's not excessively so, but I just don't want you to be surprised by it. This is one of the tools I have in the shop here. It makes it really easy if you're working on machines in bulk like this. So all I'm doing here is cracking these loose and taking them out. I apologize for the shaky videos, guys. This is hard to do on my own and show you what I'm looking at. I do my best to try to keep everything in frame, but it's just a cell phone mounted to my head with a strap, so it's kind of hard to keep one eyeball up on the screen to see what I'm showing you and do the work. So I will do my best to keep you guys in frame, but sometimes you're going to see a lot of motion like that when I'm moving my head around to look at something. There's no better way for me to do this and show you guys what I'm actually doing in the shop. So I apologize for that, but unfortunately it's kind of the nature of the beast. Alright, so now we got all these 4 bolts removed. I'm going to set those aside. One good tip if you're not familiar with working on one of these machines, or you're taking things apart and you don't want to forget what goes where, is they have a bunch of little boxes, or I keep these things too. These are a test cube that I print out for thin wall testing, and they also make really great little tiny screw holders. So if there's like just say the extruder has a set of screws, as I take the extruder apart, they'll go in one container. If I take apart like this assembly over here, they would go in another. So I keep track of who's what, so when I put it back together, it makes sense. Alright, so just remove that bar, comes right off. And then I'm going to ease this up all the way to the top of the screw. Once you get off of the screw, it should pop right off of the rails. It might be a little tight to get it off, but if you keep turning the screw with your hand down on the motor, it'll come off. Once you get that off, it's still attached to the machine down here, so just kind of set it aside. I'm just going to put it over here for now. Alright, the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this bed from the base. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen these wheels up. And drop them off. So there's a trick with these wheels. When you're in the machine, when they're on the machine, if you're looking at it from the front, if you turn to the right, this is tightening and left is loosening. So right is tight, left is loose when it's on the machine. They're also marked on the wheel itself, on the top, but you can't see that once in the machine. It's kind of a dumb way to mark it, but should have had something on the front of the wheel in my opinion. But anyway, those are out. Oh, this was missing a wheel in the back. Okay, cool. Alright, so now that my bed is loose, I'm just going to lift this straight up. You might have springs go flying. If you do, just grab them. Not a big deal. And you can see here, this has these silver springs. These are the stock springs that come with this machine. These are absolutely garbage. We'll be upgrading those to the yellow springs. It's just, they don't work good at all. Alright, so this is your little wire protector. It stays on here. It's part of the board. This is what your board will look like. This has damage to it. We're going to deal with that. I'll probably end up either replacing this board and making this a scrap and then peel this off, or I'll just peel this off and put glass plate on it. This is where your thermistor hides. This is the wire for it on the board. So this is what it will look like if you took this off. That's how you take it off. And it's wired down to the control board right here. Usually with these, I'll just set this towards the back like this, out of the way. Okay, I'm going to clear these wheels away. Some of these parts, these springs, put them all over there. Okay. So now, what I want to do is I want to adjust or deal with this mess right here. Alright, so when you have a machine that's rocking like this, chances are your frame is twisted up a little bit. And all that means is you usually have to loosen it and tighten it and you're all set. And on this particular Ender 3 Pro, the bolts I'm after are these two here and these four here. These two control the uprights, the bottom ones, and these four control this way. And I have a feeling that this is just not tightened down straight. So when I loosen it and then gently tighten it back down again, you're going to find that the frame will want to go back to its original squared position. So all I'm going to do is just going to loosen these up. These weren't that tight, so that might have been part of the problem. I just heard a crack out of the frame. It's probably releasing and starting to relax and go back to where it should be. Just get these loose enough. Alright. I'm not going to worry about the uprights right now, because obviously that's going to not affect this base. That'll be for squaring that part of the machine. Just be careful when you're moving this around, you're dragging the stuff around. It's all attached still, so. Oops, wrong button. Okay. Alright, now we get those loose. Let's see if it helps at all. And as you can see, that base is no longer rocking anymore. It's pretty solid right there. So that's all it was. It was just those were off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up while it's laying flat like this. I'm just going to do it with a manual Allen wrench instead of my speed wrench there, my motorized one, because I just want to set these against the frame and kind of lock it in place with it down like this so it stays flat. So all I'm doing is I'm putting the Allen wrench in here, snugging these up to the frame. Not anything crazy. Not tightening them hard just yet. Just want to lock it down so it doesn't move around anymore. Once we get locked down, we'll test it again. and make sure we're still square. Just gonna move some stuff out of the way. Okay. I like to do a cross pattern on these. Diagonal, top right, bottom left, top left, bottom right. Kind of like when you change a tire. You do the star pattern when you're tightening it up. Okay. And that should be tight enough so this frame won't move when I move the machine around. And then I can pick it up and get a better angle on those and really tighten it up. But there you go. I can now like try to move this machine. I can't shake it anymore. So that means that my feet are now flat. My frame is now level. Alright, so now go ahead, we'll tighten this down. Again, I like to do it in a cross pattern. So this one, this one, this one. And I make them fairly tight because these are important. These are going to hold together your frame and keep you square. Okay. Obviously, don't strip them. They'll go so hard you pull the aluminum threads out. While I'm here, I'm going to just tighten these down. Is it probably loose? Yeah, they were. And the middle ones. The middle ones here hold the Y axis in place. Alright. Those are good tight. Slide this down. Watching out for wiring as I put it back down. Make sure it's flat on the desk. And we'll recheck one more time. That is so much better. It doesn't rock anymore because now these are all straight to each other. This is the Y. What I'm looking for here is some smooth motion. Now, one thing I want to point out is you hear that noise. If you unplug the motor from gently, you don't hear that motor noise anymore. It's not sending power to the board and it's not going to resist you as much as it was. So now what I'm listening for is I'm listening for belt tracking noises like rubbing. And I do kind of hear something in this. That could be the wheels, the wheel bearings might be shot, or it could be the belt. So in order to determine which is which, I'm going to loosen the tension on this belt and I'm going to remove it and I'm going to run this back and forth. So let's go ahead and just do that. Down here on this particular model, it depends on what model you have. There's a couple different tensioners out there, but this one here has an elongated slot and these two bolts on each side, and it just slides back and forth in these inside of here. So what you do is just crack these loose and it'll let it slide forward and take the tension off. When you put it back, you just want to kind of like put something in here to pull it tight like this and tighten it at the same time, and that's how you lock your tension in and your belt will stay nice and tight. I like the knob ones better. We can just adjust with a wheel. Those are much better, but it is what it is. That's why they evolved to those from this. So I'm not taking these out. I'm just loosening them up. Just a little slide. There it goes. So that's how this moves back and forth. Let's put belt tension on. So push it all the way in. There's no more belt tension. You can see I can move the belt easily. These guys just slide out from their slots. This is typical of how they mount belts to these machines. Just a little brass on the end of it that pinches off the belt and makes like a stop. Unloosen both these belts, release them both, and now I'm going to slide this. And that sounds way better. So my noise is definitely coming from my belt. So we might have to pull that apart and check out, why am I getting belt noise? Is it twisted? Is it a bad bearing? Is it just rubbing on something that it shouldn't be? Is it just tracking bad? I don't know yet. So since I have to take that apart anyway, now this, I'm checking this for side to side, and there's just a tiny bit. You can hear it. And that could probably be adjusted out with the eccentric nuts that keep this thing straight and rolling tight and free and all that. That's an adjustment you can make with 2 of the nuts on this. But it also could be a worn wheel. Now, since I have to take this off anyway to investigate this belt issue, I'm going to pull this off too and look at it out in the open. So I'm not trying to peek at it underneath, because it's actually hard to see stuff. I can see there's some crud in the grooves too. You see that right there? See this on this side too. Yep, right there. You want to make sure that you clean these every now and then with some alcohol, because they load up with stuff and then they can actually cause artifacts in your print. Alright, let's get this out of the way. I'm just taking these bolts out. Like I said, if you're doing a lot of work on machines, these tools are really kind of important to have, because they really save your wrists from twisting things and getting carpal tunnel, but also saves a ton of time. It slides right off like that. So all this is just a belt tensioner. You can see here's got these elongated slots for moving it out. A couple witness marks there where it was tightened down. Bearing right here, the belt just rolls around. Feels nice, it's moving good. That's not my issue, I don't think. I don't feel any wear in that, so just set that aside. Now I'm going to slide this right off. Since the belt's not attached to it, it just rolls off the end. Just like that. Okay, we're going to take a look at these wheels. Now when I'm looking at these wheels, what I'm looking for is not necessarily this dust. That's kind of a common thing with these wheels. They're made out of like a plastic material, so they're gonna like shred some dust off of them over time as they wear. That's not really an indication of a problem. It's actually kind of common. What I'm looking for is deep grooves in these wheels. And it's kind of hard to show you on camera what I'm talking about, but the deep grooves I'm talking about would be on this beveled part. These wheels that have like a 45-degree bevel when they're new, and as long as it's still beveled like that, they're probably good. And in this case, they don't look too bad. I'm going to leave these in there. I don't see a reason to change these just yet. There's not a line through the bevel. So right here you see that this side has just these round standoffs, and this side has these hexagon ones. These are your eccentric nuts. Okay, so I've gone ahead and loosened up the eccentric nuts on this, and I'm going to show you what I mean by a loose wheel. When you grab a hold of your bed and you try to move it side to side, and you hear this, and you can see how this is moving pretty good right here. There's some slop between this wheel and this rail, that's what it is. So the way the eccentric nuts work, let me go ahead and take one of these off so I can show you this. So I'm going to take one of these off. I'm just going to show you what the eccentric looks like underneath. Alright, stop it, wrench. Alright, so I'm going to leave the nut right in there. Slide the wheel off. Yeah, I don't see any real bad grooving on those. But this right here is the eccentric nut. And if you notice that this bolt is kind of close to this side and not close to this side, it's off center. So this little round part here is also off center. What this does is it goes in that hole, and as you turn it, it changes the pitch of the wheel left to right. So that would be putting the wheel kind of closer this way, and that puts the wheel kind of further away from it. So that little round stud part goes in this hole like that. Wheel goes on top of that. Nut goes on the end of that. I'm gonna leave it loose for a minute. Put my wrench on here, and then I'm gonna tighten it down. Now, when you're adjusting these, one second. Okay. When you're adjusting these, it's a good idea to just back this off just a little bit. Not a lot, just enough to let the tension off of this. The reason why we're going to do that is it makes it easy to turn the nut for the adjustments. And then once you get your setting exactly where you want it, you just tighten this down by holding the bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the adjustments for that. So again, super loose. So I'm going to put my wrench in here. I'm going to get a hold of the adjustment. I'm going to turn it just a little bit. And you can kind of watch the wheel and feel it at the same time when it starts to tighten down. There it is. And now I'm going to do the front one as well. Try to keep it even. Just keep going until there, right there. No more rattle. A little tiny bit. Give a little more. There we go. So now I check to make sure I still roll pretty freely. I'm not binding, I'm not too tight. Still roll nice. I've got no wiggle anymore. It's completely silent now. I cannot rattle this on this rail anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down. I had to do this in the machine. You would just put the Allen wrench here, your wrench down there, and you lock down the bottom nut. I'm not playing with the eccentric now. I am tightening this nut to hold this nut in place. It locks it in place. If it's out of the machine, simply just put the Allen wrench on that end and tighten this up. Double check after you tighten it that nothing moved. It's going to be a little snug to get on the rail. Just give it a push, it'll go. So there we go. Nothing moved, but I am rolling a little tighter now than I would. Now to make a minor adjustment like that, I don't need to loosen this up. I can kind of force it with this, so I'm just going to give it just a little backwards just to loosen that up and make sure that I don't go too much where I induce a rattle again. Just, I mean, we're talking just a touch. There we go, maybe that. It's a little tight. Alright, that's not too bad. You just want to make sure it rolls freely. And it's not rattling. Make sure you go all the way slowly and gently. Don't break a switch. Go all the way. Make sure you're making contact, and you are. Alright, so the next thing we'll work on is this belt. We're going to figure out what's going on with that. These belts are kind of tough to remove from these machines, and put back in without twisting them. But there's a couple ways to do it. It's going to be difficult to show you on camera, but I'll do my best. But let me get the machine turned around and set up. Okay, so here we are at the back of the machine. If you have an Ender 3 V2, this has a cover that has to be removed, but it's basically the same concept back here. It might be a little different, but nothing too bad. Alright, so this is your Y motor. I have it unplugged currently because I wanted to move this without the motor interfering with the tension. This is your limit switch here for the Y-axis. So if you ever have to change it, this is where you would go. This is the wire for it. It goes into the board over here. Alright, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to see why this belt was making that kind of funny noise. And I can see on this end, I don't have teeth. And on this end, I do have teeth facing upward. So I'm twisted. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, all the way out. First thing I'm going to do is I want to inspect this belt for wear marks. Because it sounded like it was rubbing on something. So I just want to make sure there's not anything obvious wrong with this belt. I don't see anything. Now I'm going to check the teeth side, make sure there's no missing teeth. Nothing strange going on with it. Always want to check your belts when you have them apart, just because, especially if you're going to be giving this to a customer, you want to make sure it's going to work, not break in like 10 minutes. So part of my refurbishment is I go through and I check the belts. If they're worn, I replace them. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to slide this guy back in here. Underneath this pulley, there's a hole. And you get the brass started. What I'm doing is I'm just trying to keep the belt flat and slide it along the inside of this machine. This may work, it may not. If it doesn't, I have other ways, but sometimes I get it just slide right down there. It's already hitting something. Doesn't want to go. Oh, there it goes. Sometimes if you just move it back and forth like this, it'll eventually continue to move forward. It kind of gets snagged up in the grooves and the extrusion parts. And it's still hitting something. Go ahead and pull this plate off right here and see what's going on. So I'm going to disconnect my Y, switch. Alright, I'm going to grab the right tool. I believe it's this one. Nope. Next size down. Okay. I'm just going to crack these loose, take them off. You notice I'm holding the bottom of the motor as well just to support it so it doesn't fall. It's only 3 bolts. Okay, that's off and out of the way. So let's handle those. Alright. So now I'm going to take my belt. I'll try this again. Slide it down this. See, it goes a lot easier this way, but you got to remember it has to go through that hole when you put it back together. Okay, slide it all the way to the end, or at the end, and again, it's twisted. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this machine and throw it out the window. No, I was kidding. Take this machine, pick it up, and I'm going to try to look down there. It's easier with a flashlight, which of course I don't have handy right now. But what I'm looking for, I'm looking right down the center of this hole. I don't know if I can show you on camera, but down the tunnel basically. And I'm looking at the belt. And what I'm looking for is to see which way it needs to go to be straight. Right now, it is teeth side up and pretty straight, and teeth side up exiting the tunnel over here, which tells me that's good. So I'm going to put something on top of that to hold it. There we go. You look down there, it's nice and flat, there's no twist. You can actually see it if you look through this hole right here. So there's no twist, I know I'm good. I'm going to set this back down. I'm going to take this assembly right here. I'm going to slide this through it the way it's supposed to go. I'll see it's just twisted. Untwist that. Teeth up going in, teeth up coming out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set this back in place. Okay, so I've got this attached again. I got the belt coming through where I know which way I have to turn it. Right there is where it needs to be. When you put these 3 bolts in, it's important not to tighten them all the way down right away. You want to get them all started because this can pivot and make it hard to line up the holes. So always start all 3 and then tighten. Alright, those will tighten back up. So what I'm going to do now is going to start by putting this side of the belt back together. And I'm going to just reach to the front here and pull this forward. I have this motor holding this down as a weight when I'm not doing this. So I'm going to bring the bed all the way to the back, pull this tight. I'm going to slide this into the groove right here. I'm holding the other end so it can't twist up. Excuse me. And then I'm going to make so this is pulled tight. I'm pulling on this end to pull this belt. If I give this a little slack, you'll see this belt moves like this. So I'm just going to hold it like that, and I'm going to pull my belt up and just keep tension on that. Alright, I've got this turned around again. Don't forget, when you're moving your machine, you have wiring attached to it. All that stuff is still attached, so just be careful you're not like dragging stuff around and damaging anything. Alright, so now we're going to put this back into place. So if you remember, this needs that belt to go right through between here and roll over this. So I'm going to take this belt and I'm going to still keep tension on it. The reason why I want to keep tension on it is I don't want this to twist inside of this tube and we'll be right back to square one again. So by keeping tension on it, it won't allow that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tensioner and I'm going to slide the brass off. You can do it right to the side of this. You don't have to put it through the wheel because it probably won't fit good. You can do it off to the side like this. Do this while you're in frame. There we go. Keeping tension. And I'm just going to bring this right down to the machine like that. And it slides over these 2 extrusion rails. This. Okay. And like I said, I still want to just try to lock this into place now. Now that I have this in position, I'm going to be putting the bolts back in, but I can move it around. But as long as it doesn't fall off, I should be good. I can put this back into the Y carriage, like it goes like that, just to keep it out of the way, and it won't flip over anymore. Don't have to worry about it twisting up in the tube. Real quick tip on bolting this together. I usually will tilt it until I can find one of the holes visible through this and put a bolt on each side, and now I can kind of use it to rock this into position. Get the other ones set, not tight, and then I'll work on tensioning this. Alright, so what I've done is I put the bolts back in place. I've run them all the way down so they're just barely touching. They're not tight at all. You can see these are still pretty loose in here. They rattle. This still has a lot of movement. I can move it around as I need to. What I need to do now is I need to put some tension on this belt. And you can try to pull it by hand and tighten these bolts down, but it's really difficult to do it that way. What I'll do is I'll usually take something like an Allen wrench, something along those lines, and I put it in this slot right here. Now you want to be very gentle when you do this. You do not want to crank the hell out of this when you're pulling back, because you'll break something. But you can use this to kind of leverage just enough to get a twang on these belts. Belt tension is a feeling thing, I think. I've never found a really good way to do it other than by sound. So what I'm doing now is I'm holding pressure, back pressure on this Allen wrench to keep this tension. And I'm going to go ahead and lock down a bolt on each side without releasing that tension. So I put that there, that's tight. I'm going to switch hands, holding that same tension. Still hear it. And then I'm going to tighten one on this side. Get it down and get it snug. Okay, then I can release the tension and tighten the other bolt. And then we'll double check our belt. Alright, make sure these are both good and tight. You don't want these moving because this is your belt tensioning. So definitely nice and tight. Again, don't hulk it off until you break it, but that's a pretty good tension right there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this back and forth. I'm going to watch right here. And what I'm looking for is, am I tracking in the center? And as it moves, you can see slight deviation towards the edge. Not terrible. I'm not super worried about it, but I am going to move this over in the slot a little bit. Run it back and forth a couple times and see how that does. There we go. So now you see the belt stays mostly in the center of this spindle here. Doesn't want to like ride off one side or the other. The one in the back, that's a little bit close. I'm looking right here. It's a little close to this edge. So this is going to rub. So again, I'm just going to slide the brass thing over in the slot. You can adjust these back and forth in the slot to make it track better. Run it back and forth a couple times. And yeah, it's tracking much better. It's still towards the end touching. I can get a little more out of that. That's as good as it's going to get. So you'll notice here that it's staying mostly in the center of that spindle. Still staying pretty good on this spindle, even better actually. And I don't hear that weird rubbing noise as much as I did. Okay, so here we are, the machine's set on its side. So pull these out real quick. This tool is a wow stick. It's a great little kit. It comes with a whole lot of bits for it. And it's fairly strong. It does the job for the smaller screws. I use this a lot for my electronics, extruder motors, things like that. 3 screws come out, this comes down, and it's going to have a plug in here. Now, when these machines are done at the factory, they hot glue everything in. The reason why they do that is to make sure nothing comes out in shipping. They also zip tie everything together here. This is going to be in my way, so I'm going to go ahead and free up these zip ties. I'm very careful not to cut wires when you do that. I've done it a long time, that's why I made it look so easy, but be gentle. Pay attention to where you're cutting, just so don't snip a wire. Snip a wire, that's going to be a whole nother set of repairs for you to do. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to work my way in here and grab a hold of this hot glue. I'm just going to move this wire that's in my way if I can. No, I can't. It's glued. Awesome. So, right here, and I just kind of grab the glue gently, watching out for wires again. Make sure you're not pinching anything. And this is my way of removing it. There are other ways. Find what's comfortable for you. Just be careful. Really, really gentle and careful when you're doing this. You don't want to damage anything. Alright, so now that I got the majority of the glue off, I'm going to try to work that connector out. And what I do is I use the prongs of this, like that, and I just kind of lift out. And what I'm trying to do is pull on this connector by this little ridge, and not by the wires. You pull by the wires, you have a very strong risk of ripping the wires right out of this connector, and then you need a whole new assembly. Alright, so let's slide this out of the way. This was just my fan connection. It goes right here, below this empty port right here. That's where it goes. This is just the motherboard fan, but we want this out of the way when we're working, because it literally will just be in the way the entire time if I leave it on there. There's other things we have to do in here. There are no ferrules on this machine. You can see these wires are going straight into the board. There's no plastic and metal ferrule on the end of that. So what happens is these screws will loosen up over time. And I'll bet you anything that these are loose. Yeah. That's barely tight. These are the main connections of your machine. This is where all the power happens. These are the main powers in. This is a fan, this is your hotbed, and this is your hot end. And if these are loose, what happens is they will generate a lot more heat. It will start to damage these wires. Eventually the insulation will fail. The wires will touch, it'll short out, or this green thing can melt down. I've seen that too. So it's very important to get ferrules on your machine. If you don't have ferrules on your machine and you don't have the kit to do it, you don't know how to do it, I can do it for you. Get the machine to me and I'll make it happen. It's kind of a really important thing in my mind that gets done, because it's an electrical safety issue. But right now we're gonna pause on that, the ferrule part of it. I don't want to get into doing that just yet until I'm putting the board in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to remove things that are going to kind of obstruct me. Now they put this tape on here to insulate this metal piece. This tape is really tough to get off and really tough to replace. You can use duct tape, black duct tape, silver duct tape, whatever you have, to replace this tape. What I usually will do is I'll try to cut it carefully and then use the same tape over again, and then reinforce it with either electrical tape or duct tape or whatever I have handy. All it does is just further protection from rubbing against this metal and cutting into insulation of the wires. That's all this is for. So the wires generally will not slide through this because it's tape. So what I will do is I will very carefully, very carefully cut the tape with these cutters. And when I'm doing this, I'm feeling as I slide in to make sure I'm not picking up a wire, because you do not want to cut a wire or damage it or anything. So I'm just very gently going through here and feeling my way as I go to make sure I'm only grabbing the tape. So it gets a little tough because the tape gets tight. Okay, just see, there's, you can grab this this braiding really easy with that pointy pliers. So just be careful, go slow, take your time here, make sure you're only getting tape. Alright, there we go. So now that brings that harness nice and open like this. What I'm trying to remove is the hotbed. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this, because this is just my way. That's the only reason I'm doing it. Just kind of wiggling and unplugs. That takes the tension off of this so I can see what I'm doing here. This is the harness I want right here. It goes to the hotbed. It has both a thermistor and the wiring for the hotbed inside. It's going to pull it out of the tape and free it all. And you can see right here it's now free. I'm going to grab my little tiny screwdriver. I'm going to back off the screws that hold the wiring for the hotbed in. 1 and 2. Those will just pop right out if they're not thermally damaged, which they very well be because they're stuck. Let me back them off some more. They are stuck in there good. I'll bet you they started to melt. Oh yeah, those are good and stuck. Alright, there's one. Wow. Wow, is that tight. Ah, there's the other. Alright, so what was happening with those? It's hard to see on the camera, and I don't know if I can zoom in on it or not with it on my head. That solder has got flat spots. So what was happening is these are heating up hot enough to melt the solder again, and then it would just rest against the bottom of the screw container, this little like jaw right here, and kind of lower itself and flatten out, and that's why these get loose. In theory, you could come back every now and then and tighten them up, and eventually it'll be tight enough where it won't do that anymore. But the alternative is to put a ferrule on there, which is a round tube that goes over it that gets crimped down to a square, and it gives something for these to bite onto, and it's permanent. It will never change shape. So we're going to end up doing that on all these wires. Alright, so now that that's done, the next thing I want to do is I want to release this thermistor. And again, it's glued, but it's kind of glued from underneath here. So I'm going to take my pliers, I'm going to kind of go in between these two connectors right here and twist gently, very gently, to try to grab that glue. And you can kind of see it, I'm getting it. There it is. Pull that out, just like that. You don't have to re-glue these, we're not shipping this across the ocean anymore. So you don't have to worry about putting any of this back. It's not going to come out just from operation. It's going to come out if it's jarred around while shipping. And again, I just kind of slide these in, and I just very lightly wiggle. There you go. That one goes there. One tip I'll tell you, if you're going to take all this apart and you don't know what goes where, I know what goes where. I can probably do this blindfolded. But if you don't know, if it's your first time taking things apart, you have a cell phone, take as many pictures as you think you need. Take every angle, take all the pictures, so that you can look back at that picture and see how things were laid out when they go back together. It will save you so much time and trouble. Of course, if you get lost, you always let me know. Alright, I can probably tell you what to do next. So, this is now separated from the machine. I have spares of these. I have tons of end of 3 parts, so I'm just going to grab a different one, rather than mess around with this. I will fix this later, I just don't feel like doing it right now. So this will go on my shelf. So this is all one unit. Hotbed wiring, hotbed thermistor. Your hotbed wiring is attached right up in this corner underneath this thing. And your thermistor lives underneath this cap can tape and this pad. Alright. These screws are held in by this magnetic pad as well. If you don't have this magnetic pad on here, they will be loose, so be careful that you don't lose these screws. And I'm going to go grab another board and the screw kit, and we'll do the ferrules next and put this all back together. Okay, so as it turns out, none of my pads, or hotbeds rather, are without this rubber coating. This is a magnetic coating. If you're running a magnetic sheet, you need this on there. But almost every machine that I work on and refurbish, and I recommend you do the same thing, is either you're going to do a PEI sheet, and if you are going to do a PEI sheet, leave this intact. This is magnetic. It might be strong enough depending on your condition of this. Sorry, my voice is awful today. But if it comes with a new one, your PEI sheet comes with a new magnetic pad, you're going to want to put that on. If you are going to do a glass plate, you can set it right on top of the rubber. It's not a big deal. You can also peel the rubber off and sit on top of the metal. It's preference, really. I'm going to show you how to do this because I have to do it anyway because that last one was damaged. I could just use this plate as is, but I'm going to show you how to do this. You just want to start working it up in the corner, and usually putty knife will work or anything to pry it up. Be very careful you don't cut yourself and slip, because this stuff is really, really on there. But it's also pretty durable stuff where it doesn't rip that easy. So once you've got a corner started, you're just going to slowly work this off. Now you can buy replacement pads like this off of Amazon. They're not expensive. I think they're less than $10. Also the glass plate, if you want to do the glass plate, which I highly recommend if you're not going to do a PEI sheet, is about $10 to $15. Alright, just look up Ender 3 glass plate or head over to my website. I have affiliate links which do cover all of these things. You'll find the glass plates listed there. The affiliate links do earn me a small profit some of the time, so it helps me out if you use those links instead of just going to Amazon and buying it. But either way. Alright, so all I'm doing here is just peeling. So as you can see, it does come off with a fight, but it comes off as one sheet. So that makes it nice and easy. If it does rip, you just start over, get another edge going, and hopefully it won't fight you the whole way. There is my hotbed. I'm missing my screws. I'm going to have to replace those. And this is what the magnetic sheet looks like when you're done. Like I said, you can buy these off of Amazon fairly cheap. And you would just start it in a corner and roll it out. They're a little tough to not get air bubbles in them. So don't recommend doing this unless you absolutely want to. I would either leave it on and use the PEI sheet on top of that, or peel it off and put the new PEI sheet rubber mat down. It's going to come with one, or use glass. That's my advice on that. So alright, I'm back. I've got all my stuff ready to get started on reassembly. But while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and do these ferrules real quick and show you how to do that. So again, this is an opportunity where I'd want to take a picture if I didn't remember that the black wire goes on top of the red wire. Because even though they're marked on the board, it's in the machine. It's hard to see. Really hard to see stuff. If you're ever doing a firmware upgrade too, you're going to need to know what board you have. Best way to do that is remove the cover like we have here. It's on the board. I think it's over here somewhere. It'll say Creality in the model of the board. You also want to take a look at the main chip of the board, which is somewhere under this ribbon cable. I think it's right here. There it is. It's right here in this corner. This you want to know what kind of chip you have, because there's a couple different variations, and that will affect what firmware you get. So that's something to note. Alright, so this is my connection to my power supply. I had it unplugged earlier, remember? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the solder off. I'm going to snip it off. Just this much. Just enough to get it off. And I'm going to... I know you hear those things going. I'm not even kidding you. There has to be probably a couple hundred ends over there for me doing that. One of these days I'm going to pull that desk out and vacuum them all up. But they always end up over there. It's actually kind of funny. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to strip off some insulation. I'm going to use these because I've been doing this a very long time and I have the feel for this. Word of caution, you can cut into the wire and inadvertently remove wire doing this. So if you're not skilled at this part, I would use something like actual wire strippers, something along those lines. Word of caution, you can damage this wire and cut it too short if you start cutting it off too many times. But like I said, I've been doing this for a while, so I'm going to use these. I'm going to cut off about that much. It's about a half inch or so. You can use the ferrule and line up and see it, but I'm just going to do this from experience. Okay, there's that one. And I'm going to do about the same on this one. Okay, there we go. And then you twist the wires up, kind of just neaten them up, make them tight together. Make it easier to put the ferrule on. Okay, so now I'm going to open my ferrule kit here. And if I remember right, I don't think the black ones fit this, but let's try. I don't think so at all. I think that's going to be totally wrong. Yeah, it's not the black ones. What you're looking for is the tube of the ferrule. The metal part should just barely fit the wire. And this is what a ferrule looks like. It's got the plastic boot on the end of it for insulation. And this is the metal piece I was talking about. And it's a tube. And should just barely slide on here with just a little bit of resistance. That's the one. And you want to slide it down until the wires poke out the end. Alright, if they don't poke out the end, you need to remove a little more insulation. But right there is about what you want to see. Then there's a tool, the crimping tool, that is actually a square. And you're just going to put it in there, like that. And it makes it square. Okay, so now you've got this square piece for that to go into there, and the screw will hold it down, the jaw will hold it down nice and tight. It's a really good idea. Give it a tug, make sure it doesn't come out. It doesn't. And then we're going to trim it. Now there's lines in this. I usually will leave 3 little squares. 1, 2, 3. See these little squares in this that the tool made. I usually kind of do it right there. Trim it off. There's some more stuff behind that wall. Alright, another blue one. I'll slide that on, same thing. Just you slide it into the insulator, kind of twist your ferrule as you go down to kind of guide it. Wires poke out the end. Really easy process, you just gotta buy the equipment. The kit comes with a bunch of these ferrules and the tool. I believe I have that on my affiliates page as well. Crunch it down. But if you don't want to spend the money on the kit, spend the money on me, bring it over to me, and I'll do all this for you. Alright. And snip the end. Okay, so now we have those. We're going to go ahead and plug it into the board and tighten those down. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and put this in. And what I usually do is just kind of like work it in. I put a bend in the wire like this. Okay, so it's kind of facing the right way. You just kind of work it around, and eventually it's going to slide right in like that. You want to make sure it goes all the way up to the plastic. Okay, then you take your screwdriver, hold this wire in place, and at the same time, turn this screw down until it tightens down on it. It is possible to miss, meaning it'll go underneath the jaw. So always make sure you tighten this up good, and then you check the wire. Give it a tug. It's in there. And I tighten those down pretty snug, so it's not going anywhere. Black goes over the red, so we're going to do that one next. Again, I'm just going to put a little kind of a bend in this wire to make it go the way I want it to go. And then just kind of work it around until it goes into the slot. Just like that. Okay, again, make sure your plastic slides all the way up. The blue piece should be touching the green right there. In my case, because I have blue ferrule. Alright, I tighten this up. Holding it in place with my finger. I put my thumb against the screwdriver here to kind of hold that, and then just kind of turn it. It makes it a lot easier. You'll learn these little tricks as you do this enough. Trust me. Alright, so let's tighten that down. Okay, so now we had pulled this apart earlier. So we're going to lay these in place. Just kind of something like that. We're going to put these back in. It does not matter where they go. The reason why it doesn't matter is this is nothing more than a resistant circuit. It works by sending power through this board and comes right back to here, and it gets hot because it's like a big resistor basically. So it doesn't really matter which is positive, which is negative. It's just flowing through. So we're just going to put them in however we feel like putting them in. And if you look at the bottom of the board, it's not marked with a polarity either. It just says hotbed for these 2 screws. Just going to open these up some more, make sure it fits. So literally any way I want, whatever is convenient. There's that one. Make sure the metal is all the way in, the plastic is touching the plastic. Thumb on the screwdriver, and we'll get tightening. Alright, same thing with this. No particular order these go in. Just a resistant loop, it goes up and heats the hot element, and it comes back to the board. So we'll go ahead and slide that in, all the way in. If it doesn't go all the way in, trim back that metal a little more on the ferrule. Alright, we'll tighten that down. That's that one. And this one, same thing. Okay. That's in. Double check for tug test. We're good. Alright, so now, last but not least, we have to plug our thermistor in. Just going to weave it in under all these wires. Kind of like that. And It only goes one way. It's got little tabs on it, so it can only fit one way. And we just plug it in, make sure it plugs all the way in. Like that. That's in place. We're going to fix this tape next. This cover comes in next. Again, you gotta make sure your plug is back in. The plug goes right in there. You can see it just hanging out empty. And it goes this way, I believe. It'll only go one way, so it'll either it's gonna snap in or it won't. You can't really do it if it's the wrong way. It won't let you. Okay, plug in, make sure we're all plugged in. Make sure this is not gonna get crushed. We'll push it into here like that. Push this on the side, and there you go. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the 3 screws back into the electronics bay and get this all turned back up right ways, and we'll tackle the bed next. Alright, so I'm working my way around the machine. I've got it back up on its feet. Electronics covers plugged back in. And I'm just going around doing kind of like a punch list of things I know that I've disconnected and I can now reconnect. So I'm going to plug in my main power cord there. I'm going to plug in my Y limit switch right here. I'm going to plug in my Y motor. These are all things I unplugged earlier. So I'm just going to tip this on its side so you can see. And it just snaps in place like that. Okay. And we're going to bring the plate around to the front of the machine. Now we'll just grab this and turn it. Set that behind there. And we're going to work on this plate. So first thing I need to do is put my screws back in because it's missing them on this plate. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws back in. Okay. So now we got that. I'm just going to set them down kind of at an angle so they stay. And we'll grab my springs. This was part of an upgrade kit. I've already used the other stuff on other ones. But here's the springs it comes with. Toss that in the trash. Okay, so you have 4 of them. They're all the same length. There's nothing different about any of them. Just kind of untwist them there. So the first one I do is the one in the back here with this plastic retainer. It's kind of a pain. So slip it on the screw and then slip the plastic retainer in place like that. And I try to get the screw into the hole in the plate. So the screw goes through the hole in the carriage with the spring, plastic retainer, and everything on it. And then I grab this wheel and I'm just going to start it under here on the bolt. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory what I'm doing. You don't really need to see it. It's very difficult because you can't really see what you're doing. You kind of have to feel around to get it lined up. Once you find it, you kind of hold it in place with one hand and turn with the other. Alright, she's on there. That was fun. The next part's not as bad. What I usually will do is I'll take a spring and I'll slide it right over the screw in the back first, and then I'll set it down so the screw goes in the hole. Just like that. And then I keep it down like that, keep the tension on it. So then it can't fall out, it can't fall off, and it's less annoying. Second one, I will just put the screw on spring like that and just set it down. Switch hands, hold the screw on that spring with a thumb so it doesn't fall off. Slide the other one on like that, put them back down, and just get them in the holes. So now you've got all your screws and springs in place. Get them in the holes like that. Okay? Next step is put the wheels on. Don't tighten anything, just get them started. This is just to keep the bed from flying up and off. About that much, just enough. Alright, so I got that last wheel started. I got one of my shop plates here. Obviously when this machine goes up for sale, it gets a brand new one. But I use these for my first leveling configurations, just in case something goes wrong. These plates are already used and kind of old. They come with some of the machines. But when they go out the door, they usually have a brand new plate on them, or at least a plate that's in really good condition. It might not be brand new. But if it's passable, it'll go. This one probably could get cleaned up and used, but I keep it around the shop just for testing. Alright, so I've put my plate on, my clips on, my wheels are still completely relaxed. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to actually tighten these down evenly. Oops, went the wrong way with that one. I'm going to go evenly with these until they reach the bottom, all the way tight, and then I'm going to loosen them a certain amount. And what that does is it preloads your springs up. And the reason why you want to do this is it makes the bed a whole lot tighter and more resistant to becoming unlevel as time goes on. It doesn't back off as much as it will if these are loose. If these are loose, they can vibrate, back off even more, change the level of your bed, and that's why you hear people saying, oh my god, I have to like level after every other print. It's so annoying. This is why they're not doing it this way. So all I'm doing right now is just tightening these wheels all the way down. It takes a minute, and I try to do it evenly, like back and forth like this, to avoid warping anything. But yeah, almost there. I'll tighten these the rest of the way, and I'll come back to you. Alright, so now I got them all tightened down. This is all pretty rigid, doesn't move at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this off the same amount for every wheel. So the way I accomplish that is I just put my finger on the side of it and I pull back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same thing up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That gives about the same amount of release to each of these springs. There is a tiny bit that I can still flex these and move these down. But after I set this up the way I'm going to set it up, you shouldn't need to go down that much with the bed. It should be pretty straight, but we'll get there. For now, that's it for the bed part of this. So now we've done the electronics. We've done the Y-axis completely over. We fixed the frame, and we've fixed the bed. So I'm going to go ahead and call this part 1. And actually, I may end up splitting up even more parts than that, but I'm going to say this is a segment complete here, because these videos are going to be pretty long, and I don't want to keep you guys like to the point where you get uninterested in what we're doing. So we'll stop here for this video. The next video I'm going to talk about putting the gantry on, things I might see in the gantry. That's a very involved part of this video series, so it gets its own little section. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.